If you're feeling ill, then it's more than likely that you will go and visit your doctor because you trust them to be able to understand your complaint and either know how to cure you or where to send you for specialist treatment. In 2007, Maury calculated that doctors are the most trusted professionals. 90% of us trust our doctor, significantly more than we trust our politicians. The Patient's Charter guarantees our expectations, and few would disagree that ongoing review to make sure that trust in our doctor's abilities is not misplaced is not an unreasonable expectation in today's audit society. Indeed, 46% of us assume that doctors, like pilots and gas engineers, undertake regular mandatory professional training already, and are amazed to find that there is currently no formal process of regularly checking doctors. Since 1858, registration with the GMC has granted a doctor a licence to practice until they retired. Doctors are doctors for life. It is in their bones that they are registered medical professionals, and they will go to their coffin with it in their hand. Only if found guilty of gross malpractice can they be struck off the medical register by the General Medical Council. Many medical professionals welcome the idea of ongoing regulation as an opportunity to demonstrate that their knowledge and skills are indeed up to date. They also recognise the need to bolster public confidence in the wake of media exposures of medical scandals. Things came to a head in the public consciousness with Shipman. He was just the final straw, along with other unpleasant episodes that did not exactly paint the profession in honour and glory. Following these revelations, the GMC was openly criticised in the media. For the government and the public, trust alone was no longer regarded as sufficient guarantee of fitness to practice, and calls were made from both within and outside the profession for that trust to be underpinned by objective assurance. The historical bargain struck between the government and the profession, by which the profession could self-regulate through the GMC in return for assured standards of healthcare, was put under the spotlight for the first time in 150 years. Society has become less trusting of the paternalistic professional model of the 19th and early 20th centuries. Enter revalidation, the process to ensure that doctors regularly demonstrate that they are up to date and fit to practice. Described as the spider in the centre of the web, revalidation requires agreement between some 40 institutions, all of whom are prepared to fight their corner. The main stakeholders are the 14 Royal Colleges, the British Medical Association as the profession's trade union, the NHS with responsibility for clinical governance, the Department of Health, devolved into 4 counterpart government departments in England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, and finally, sitting at an awkward juncture of all competing interests, is the GMC, tasked by Parliament to ensure the quality of medical provision by setting professional standards, overseeing the medical education and licensing doctors. The complexity of the system and the intransigence of some key players meant that it has taken 12 years of false starts and intensive negotiations to reach any sort of consensus, either about exactly what revalidation is or how it should be carried out. Initially, the profession refused to recognise the need for revalidation, and it was seen by many as an assault on their professional integrity. Why spend valuable time filling in forms to demonstrate what they did anyway, when they could be treating patients? There were fears that the process would be onerous on doctors, who might end up down on their hands and knees with a 10-foot pile of paper on their back. There were concerns about specialisms. How could one set of standards cover practices as diverse as psychiatry and anaesthetics? And who was going to set them anyway? Then there were disagreements about aims and purposes. Is what is preeminent the doctor and the career of the doctor? Or is what is preeminent the safety of the patient? The self-regulation failed, in my view, because the profession confused the two, as many professions do. Was it just about identifying the demon of the poorly performing doctors? Or was it an opportunity for improving standards across the board? What would happen to a doctor who failed revalidation? Would that be the end of their career? Did revalidation threaten professional identity as much as it promised to enhance it? After all, this is a change which has the potential to give unwanted messages to doctors about their own performance. Not least were questions about cost. Would doctors be required to pay for their own revalidation? Would the government pick up the tab? And there were fears that revalidation would turn into an industry with senior civil servants running around trying to feed the beast without much understanding of the poor souls who were trying to implement the programme. These discussions were lengthy unpleasant, and on occasions degenerated to the personal. There were accusations of sectarianism, bullying, and backroom deals, as the focus moved from catching road doctors to one of more meaningful, continuous, and supportive professional development that was more comprehensive than a tick-box exercise. In 2008, legislation was passed that granted the powers to implement revalidation across the board, and finally, in 2010, a revalidation process was agreed. The doctor presents a portfolio of evidence to demonstrate participation in 5 annual appraisals, to include feedback from patients, colleagues, and other information such as complaints. On successful completion of all these elements, the doctor will be recommended by the responsible officer to the GMC. A series of pilots was initiated with a view to full adoption in 2011. However, the Secretary of State for Health, Andrew Lansley, expressed a lack of confidence in the process and postponed it until at least the end of 2012. Revalidation exists at the heart of a highly complex system, and this complexity has impacted on its progress. Revalidation is not as simple as you might think, because at the heart of it, it requires a fundamental shift in professional attitudes, from autonomy to regulation, and this is extremely challenging. There is a consensus in the profession that revalidation may not have stopped shipment, but if regulation were more robust, and if revalidation were more robust, then we would avoid those problems. My view is that you probably would have avoided Bristol. So, for the profession, and by definition for patients too, revalidation should serve as the kite mark, or my safety standard on my doctor.